Just a short while ago, we took a look at the GTX 960 to see how the performance was in a few more niche, less benchmarked games. And all things considered, the benchmarks went pretty well. Frame rates were decent to good, even in the more modern day. That being said, there's not only 4GB model GTX 960s out there. Can't forget about the lower spec 2GB model. Being slightly cheaper and obviously having half the memory, it doesn't seem like a great pick, but you never know. I was surprised by the performance that my 960 was able to pull off before. So in this video, we're going to be running the lower VRAM model to see the performance loss between the two cards. Both models of 960 have most of the same specs, except for VRAM of course, but also the clocks in this case. But as a quick refresher, the GTX 960 has 1024 shading units, the memory on both cards is GDDR5 and on a 128-bit memory bus. Both have a TDP of 120 watts, and both standard OEM cards have the same clocks. Although I have two different EVGA model cards here, so the core clocks are actually a little different. Core clocks on the 2GB model here, the FTW ACX 2.0 Plus, are 1304 MHz base and 1367 MHz boost, compared to the 1216 base and 1279 boost of my 4GB model, the SC ACX 2.0. Although NVIDIA's GPU boost technology will push them basically as high as it thinks they can, so you know. Memory speed is the same though, at 1753 MHz. Oh, and both are of course on the same architecture, Maxwell 2.0. I find it funny that my 2GB card is larger than my 4GB card, but that's how it goes when you get a cheap card. Beggars can't be choosers, you know? The benchmark computer is the same as normal. We're running an Intel Core i7-8700 non-K and 32GB of dual-channel DDR4 running at 3000 MHz. The display is a 1920 by 1080 monitor, but we will probably be dropping the resolution in some games later on. And of course, before running this card through my suite of games, I overclocked it, running Unigine Heaven and bringing up the core memory clocks each until Heaven froze. Doing this, I only got plus 25 MHz on the core and plus 250 MHz on the memory. Guess GPU Boost knew mostly what it was talking about. With the stage set, it's time to see how the 2GB model stacks up to the 4GB model. Will slightly faster clocks be able to claw back the loss due to lower memory, or is the lower VRAM just too much of a hindrance and you'd be better off saving up for a 4GB model? Starting off once again with Forza Horizon 5. Running medium at 1080p, the 2GB gave us 49.6 average and 46.2 lows. Comparing that to the 4GB at 52 and 49 at the same settings of course, and it's not actually that big of a drop. Now, if these were more powerful cards and we wanted to use more like the high preset, then we'd probably see that gap widen. But the GTX 960 seems to be just fast/slow enough that the medium preset only really uses 2GB of VRAM and hits close to that goal of 60 FPS at 1080p. Interesting start. Next up is Cyberpunk, which is almost definitely going to be a lot more brutal for this card. I mean, the 4GB at the low preset, 900p native, had 36.3 average and 31.7 lows. Those same settings here on the 2GB gave us 36.7 FPS average with 1% lows down to 31.0. Basically on par with the 4GB version, so again, we're at the magical level of presets where we wouldn't really go higher on a card with double the VRAM anyways, since the card wouldn't be able to keep up. Now for Helldivers 2 at 900p medium, our 4GB card got 34.9 FPS average with lows down to 27.3, and on the 2GB card it didn't run at all. I tried lowering the resolution, preset is at minimum, turned off Riva Tuner's display just in case, and it always crashed at the same point, opening the mission select. Even at 640 by 480 and even adjusting the texture heap usage limit to 2GB in the game files. So I guess Helldivers 2 is not playable on the 2GB 960. If anyone else has gotten it working, let me know. I'll be willing to come back and give it another try. Back to more stylized, easier to run games, and I know Deep Rock Galactic will run. At 1080p Ultra, the 2GB 960 returned an average of 101.5 with lows down to 98.4. Compared to the 4GB's 99.9 average and 1% lows of 89 and... the lows were way tighter on the 2GB and the average was just a touch higher. Now, 2 FPS is definitely within margin of error for the average FPS number, but those lows are far enough that there's a noticeable difference. No video memory issues here. Doom Eternal is up, and I unfortunately wasn't able to apply the medium preset like we had with the 4GB model due to VRAM requirements. So on the 2GB card with the low preset and 900p, we got 67.1 average and lows to 42.8. Funnily enough, on the 4GB with the medium preset at 900p, it was 69.1 with 1% lows to 46.4. So we actually had slightly lower frame rate even with a lower preset. This game was not very happy with our lower video memory. It did still boot though, so that's worth something, and definitely a lot better than Helldivers 2 did. Now on to BeamNG. With the 4GB 960 on normal at 1080p, we had an average of 52 with 1% lows of 44. Now, running on the 2GB model with the same preset, we had 48.7 average with lows to 44. Overall, about the same performance, although I did encounter one pretty bad stutter at this intersection, which I did not have with the 4GB model. Either way, it was still playable, although slightly lower frame rate. Next up is Risk of Rain 2. Both cards were benchmarked with the settings on screen. Both runs use the Artifact of Swarms to double the amount of enemies to strain the cards more. Both were on the Siphon Forest, I believe it's called. And at 1080p, these are the results. The 4GB card was 126.2 average with 90 lows, and the 2GB model was 126.9 average with 101.6 lows. Overall, it's margin of error. They both ran about the same. Makes sense since I saw the VRAM usage on both was less than 2GB. So for Risk of Rain 2, either card works fantastic. Obligatory late game is tougher to run warning. But again, you can drop the settings if you're encountering issues like that. Now for Counter-Strike 2. At 1080p with competitive settings, low everything, high dynamic shadows, and running a benchmark map from the Steam Workshop, the 4GB model got 208.6 FPS average with 1% lows down to 132. The 2GB model had 214 FPS average with 1% lows down to 129.5. So slightly higher average with slightly lower lows. I'd consider that run-to-run variance. And then running the same benchmark, same settings, but now at a resolution of 1440 by 1080 on both cards for the 4:3 aspect ratio. The 4GB got 250 average and 128 lows, with the 2GB model getting 252 average and 142 lows. Again, slightly higher average, and again, slightly lower lows. Very strange. But overall, it's not enough to be a massive game changer leaning towards one card or the other. And rounding off the benchmarks, we have Minecraft. For both cards, we're running with complementary reimagined shaders, using both Sodium and Iris, running both on the low shader preset. The 4GB card got 56.3 FPS with lows to 48.6, and the final result for the 2GB card, 57.9 average with lows to 52.5. Guess the Sodium and Iris optimizations just use minuscule amounts of VRAM. Or, maybe the shader settings, or maybe both. Either way, it's possible to play Minecraft with shaders using optimization mods on either of these cards, so once again, VRAM isn't as big of an issue on these cards as it may seem to be at first. Now for a little wind down with the 3D Mark scores. For Firestrike, we got 8,421, for Time Spy, we had 2513, and finally for Steel Nomad, we had 124. Comparing these with the 960 4GB, and the only one that's considerably different is actually Steel Nomad. I mean, makes sense. Steel Nomad gives a little warning that the card might not even have enough VRAM on the 2GB model, but for the other two synthetics, about the same. So, final verdict. Overall, I'm once again impressed by the GTX 960. Not only does the 4GB model hold up well, but the 2GB model isn't much different. Now, to be clear, if there's a game that requires more than 2GB of VRAM, like Helldivers 2, then it's not going to be a great time. You're either dropping settings a touch, or resolution, or just straight up not running it. And I bet it's the same for a lot of more AAA titles. But in lighter niche games, or more indie-like stylized ones, for the most part, the preset you'd be using on the 4GB model is already the same level where the 2GB one uses about the same amount of VRAM. If the 960 was much faster, then yes, the video memory would be a severe hindrance. If you had a higher VRAM, you'd be able to select a higher preset and still get 60. But it really feels like the 960 is in an incredible sweet spot of raw compute and video memory. So if your games don't have a hard limit of more than 2GB, for the most part, you're getting the same performance out of both cards.